This is episode 90 of our Road to Unicum, and today I review the EBR 105. This is the Tier 10 French wheeled vehicle in World of Tanks, and we're going to look at a pair of Tier 10 battles. The first one is Karelia, and the second one is Prokhorovka. The APCR silver penetration is really below average. It's only 190 millimeters at 100 meters distance, and that drops all the way down to 162 penetration at 500 meters. And I know some of you guys really dislike light tanks and think that, oh, the penetration drop off makes a lot of sense. Like 162 pen for a tier 10 tank is just simply terrible, and it really limits your ability to damage tanks meaningfully when you're in any kind of range, especially if you're trying to vision them. Now notice like 3 of our tanks are going toward this like middle swamp area, and these people are essentially jousting with each other. Now this might be okay like in a 1v1 type of situation, but in a game where there's still plenty of tanks alive, doing this early is pretty stupid. Like that EBR 105 essentially YOLO'd and died, and it contributed nothing to the match. Now the hill in this map can be really powerful. If you're wondering why I didn't try to rush hill either by going around the south area down along the 9 lane or through the interior in the middle, it has to do with the simple fact that tier 10 balance is really bad. Right, and there are a lot of medium tanks at tier 10 that have very high DPM, meaningful turret armor, and much better gun accuracy, right? And so if I go up to hill, there's a chance that if I don't get support, I'm going to get dogpiled and wiped out, right? And that's going to happen to our poor Object 140. It's the same reason why in mines I'm really careful about rushing hill, because what's happened to me countless times is I die on the way up, or I'll make it up to the top, but then my friendly tanks won't support me and protect the mouth of the hill, and then their tanks just run uphill and then out DPM me due to numbers, right? And so what I originally came to this bush to do was to counter spot any of their tanks that may have tried to push the interior of the hill from the northwest side over by G6, right? Because if they're climbing up the hill, I spot them, and we can put heavy damage on them and potentially prevent them from getting up to the top of the hill. Now, as it turns out, they got up to the top of the hill. From where I was actually able to spot the M48 Pat and get some damage on him. And then because he's got his gun facing horizontal to me, even with the relatively mediocre penetration from the APCR rounds, that was an easy killing blow. Now, the nice thing I know, one of their EBR 105s died almost immediately. He YOLO scouted. The other EBR 105 is two-shottable by me, right? I think he has somewhere in the neighborhood of like 540 hit points or so. Now, the thing about playing against an EBR 105 is that just recognize that if you use AP and APCR and you correctly aim, basically anywhere along the hull or turret aside from the lower half of the wheels, you should penetrate. Now I know, I posted a poll, and like by far the biggest complaint about the wheeled vehicles is that the shells the wheels absorb shells, and this is true especially if you were firing heat or high explosive and the shell hits the wheels and pre-detonate. That's definitely an issue, right? And that's why, for example, I didn't have HE loaded. Now he did penetrate me with HE because I was driving straight at him. The easiest time to penetrate one of these wheeled vehicles with heat or high explosive is when they're directly driving towards you or directly away, or if you manage to hit their turret, right? But if I'm in a situation where I'm firing at a wheeled vehicle and I don't know whether I'm going to see them frontally or laterally, I will tend to fire the the APCR round, because I know that's consistent performance. Now, I am awfully isolated here. Our other EBR 105 is going to come with me, but I need to be careful about pushing too far to the south solo, especially since we don't know where some of their tanks are. Now, their T100 light tank did go down to the G6 area, but there's still some other tanks that haven't been spotted yet. Like, I don't think we've spotted their Object 430U, and now that our EBR 105 has come close enough to me, now I feel emboldened that I can go ahead and push up a bit, and we can see what they've got defending their base. So they have a Wizzy, and he's going to do something, if he's got a crew with 6th sense, he's spotted. I think he's making a huge tactical mistake here. He's just going to give me an easy rear shot here, and he's abandoning his base. The thing is, because our tanks never successfully played hill, we have to assume that they have snipers on the northwest side of hill, and so they can cover the western side of this map, right? Especially if their Super Conqueror is still camping. We don't know whether he is or isn't, right? But there are a few things to know. Like, our heavies made a really big mistake. A lot of our heavies stopped like around D8, D9, and try to take some pot shots on the light tanks that were YOLOing around the middle of the map, and the problem is like a lot of those heavy tanks have really crappy gun handling. So the chance that they're going to hit a fast-moving light tank, especially if it's a wheeled vehicle, from 400 meters is really low. And so they essentially delayed themselves. And as a result, you can see their IS-7 is in front of my platoon mate, right? And so they've got complete control of hill. We have no idea what's up there unless I go over there and spot, or the EBR 105. And right now I'm more concerned about finding their arty and finding their backline TDs to see if we can damage them, right? But our heavies really never made it to hill in a meaningful time frame. And the one guy on our team, the Object 140, who went to a very logical location for him, H8, he kind of got hung out to dry by our heavies because what ended up happening was our heavies didn't get in a position. They stopped where our heavies are clumped up now, and so when our 140 got dogpiled, there was nobody there to help him. And then, there Wizzy kind of continues to double down on his mistake. He's driving in the open here, showing his rear. He had to have known that he was spotted. And you can't just keep driving away through large stretches of open ground, especially if you're being pursued by tanks that have better vision control than you and are faster. And so what you've seen me do here is land 3 consecutive full penetrating HE shots, and the 261 here actually makes it a touch easier by turning sideways, because I had a yellow pen indicator based on the angle, and then that changed to green. So now I've landed 4 consecutive high explosive penetrating shots. And in the 90-ish battles that I played in the EBR 105, I don't think that that's ever happened, right? With a high explosive, if it hits something, spaced armor, tracks, wheels, gun, whatever, it'll pre-detonate, and then you'll only get, just partial damage. Okay, now you notice I told the EBR we need to get the heck out of here, right? So their T100 light tank is at full hit points. It looks like their 430U is at either high or full hit points as well. And given that those are Russian vehicles, even the T100 light tank have pretty meaningful armor in terms of brawling, right? And that's especially true for the 430U, which I think it might be mathematically impossible for me to penetrate him frontally based on how strong the hull armor values are. It's ridiculous. It's like heavy level armor, but on a Russian low profile platform with really good mobility. So we don't want to get stuck in a brawling match with these guys. Obviously, I don't want to just straight up run away. I need to do my job of spotting and then letting our 2 arties do the work. So since I killed their 261, that's one tactical advantage we have. We don't have hill, but we have 2 arties, so we can, through war of attrition, hopefully damage them. Okay, and you're going to see me make a big mistake here. Right now, I'm not spotted by the 430U. What I should do is back up carefully diagonally. Here, I overexposed the back half of my tank, so he spotted me, right? And I doubled down on my mistake by taking a snapshot at him. Now, granted, the 430U's gun handling is not particularly good. My tank can aim really quickly, but nonetheless, because I stuck, my butt out the back left wheel when I was backing up, I allowed him to spot me, right, and potentially to damage me. And I can't afford to eat one of his shells. Even if we trade shells, his Alpha 440 is much more meaningful than my 390, and I can ill afford to drop into one-shot territory because there's still too much of the battle that's left, right? Okay, so I don't want to stay here too close. Obviously, unless I'm peeking out from behind a bush, their 430 is going to spot me anytime I look out, and I have to assume that they've got some tanks that are on the northwest side of the hill ready to snipe down and cover this area of the map, right? So, the thing is, so their T100 was already in position. He had the first shot advantage. I wasn't expecting him to be there. We exchanged shots, and I do manage to out-damage him because I have the bigger Alpha gun, but it's not really a good idea for me to just hang out here. And you can see someone just nailed the dirt just to the right of my tank, right? And so that might have been the JPE 100. The interesting thing is sometimes you can tell what caliber guns are being fired at you based on the sounds that the shells make and such. But regardless, I can't stay here. I'm too close. I don't like being within a square and a half of opposing mediums and lights. It's too easy for them to counterspot me, so I need to back up a bit. But I don't necessarily want to be too passive. I just need to go somewhere where I have some vision. Alright, so we're in the process. We've almost completely lost the southeast area of the map. The one thing that is holding them is the fact that we've got an E3 back there, and he's in a really tough position for them to dig out, right? So he's behind a rock where there's an adjacent bush, so he can get the first shot advantage. And the only part that they're really going to be able to meaningfully penetrate from the front is his lower glacis, and that's only if they spot him and can see him. So I'm going to make a run toward hill. The thing that's kind of really scary here is I'm going to get spotted, right? And the second that happens, I've got to drive straight toward the hill to try to get underneath him. And as I do so, notice I move behind that rock just to provide some cover. And then thankfully, our EPR picks off that JPE. Okay, so I'm now taking shots that are landing behind me, which means the shots are coming from in front of me, most likely from the 430U and T100 light tank. But we're like in a really awkward position here because we haven't cleared the 1-2 lane and we haven't cleared hill. So while we are one tank ahead, this is kind of a really dicey situation, and I need to be patient and hope we can get some spots. So the EBR was originally, I think he was flexing clockwise. It's actually better for him to come to me, potentially. I mean, the other thing he could do, if he were feeling so bold, is to run to the bottom of the hill over by like F6 and try to proxy spot their tanks that are on the top of the hill. But the problem is that if he tries to climb up on hill, he'll be exposing himself to fire from the 430U and the T100 light tank. And then obviously I just got shot again. Our already does put more damage in the T100 light tank, which is good, but I've got to be careful. I have to assume that if the 430U hits me, if he gets a high roll, I'm one-shottable. So for that reason, I'm going to play a little bit careful here, and then back up and make sure I find that magical trifecta of a bush adjacent to a rock with a good field of view. So we know where the 430U is. He's pretty beat up. Obviously we don't want to just frontally YOLO rush him. That wouldn't be too smart. And he has his flank protected by the T100 light tank. So I'm going to gradually, just kind of work different angles to see if I can view stuff. The other thing that I can try to do is to head toward this, this platform that's ahead of me, but stay underneath it. And I'm going to try to do that by going clockwise this time, right? But I got to be careful for that T100 light tank. He's, getting beat up and low in hit points too, but actually he's one-shottable, right? But okay, I've been spotted now. I can't just kind of hang out here because, I could get shot from the hill. I'm staying way too stationary. You're going to see me get punished for this later. But basically, I need to get out of here. They have a pretty good idea of where I am. I don't necessarily want to hang out. And I am curious to see whether any of their tanks that were in the southwest may have pivoted and flexed back toward their base. They're not in any danger of getting capped out right now. I know people are like, cap, but in this case, I can't do it. I'm too easy to pick off. Got spotted again. This is a little scary. And, to some extent, like, our guerrilla is in the most useless position ever. And he's been in a useless position for a long time. He really should have come over down to C1 so that when we started to spot the T100 light tank and the 430U, he could have put some shells. But a lot of players do this, especially ignorant players. They'll overcamp and basically be nothing but stationary bots or turrets for long stretches of time. And then I got very lucky. That shot went exactly where I was aiming, which was the lower front glacis of that Super Conqueror. That guy was camping their base in the beginning, and he was overexposing himself. He should have been peeking out with only his turrets showing. Now, I do take a run here at the 430U because I know I was going to have the first shot advantage because he was facing the EBR 105. But I make a mistake. I'm too stationary here, and I get picked from the hill by the IS-7. Right? And keep in mind, the IS-7 has terrible gun handling, and he hit me because I was being too stationary. And here, like, our EBR 105 almost gave me a heart attack. He was leaning out trying to spot. In this particular case, like, he can't afford to get spotted because we don't, not only could the IS-7 shoot him if he's spotted, but we don't know where the FV is. And that FV, if he's firing, if he's firing HESH, he could easily one-shot the EBR, right? And then even like our Artie here is trying to cap. He's too much on the far side of the cap, which is kind of a flat area. The best thing to do is come closer towards where the EBR 105 is, make them have to come up and around, and especially the I-7 with his horrible gun depression, right? And to sit behind that bunker so that they can't get shot at by the FV, especially if the FV is sitting on top of hills. So you kind of got to think of these different kind of angles and fields of fire in real time and figure out where the best place to go. Okay, so this battle is going to look totally different. Tier 9s and Tier 10s. By the way, some of you guys had asked me about my thoughts on the new matchmaker. I've been playing a lot of 8s, 9s, and 10s, especially 8s and 10s, and I think the new matchmaker is far better than it used to be. I see a lot more same tier matches where, like the previous battle in Karelia, where everyone's a Tier 10, or battles where there's only a 1-tier differential between the highest and low tier, which I think provides a lot more fun gameplay. I mean, it's really lame having Tier 8s face Tier 10s because of the scaling between tiers. Okay, so notice EBR 105 has the foolish hope of trying to the F1 bush. For that matter, their Sheridan does too. In high tier battles, you will only get to the E1 or F1 bush if the other side is full of complete morons, right? Because vision range are too good. And notice, I selectively shoot the taller, squishier, bigger target, the AMX, instead of wasting my shot on the I-7, which can be pretty tough to penetrate from the side. And I told the Artie exactly where I was going to go and what I was going to do in the hopes that our Artie may dump on these guys as they're crossing over open ground sideways trying to get to hill. Now the nice thing about hill is I can play in this little area, this little divot on the top of hill, the crown of hill, and this very wide set of bushes in front of me will allow me to move up and spot these guys periodically. And if I'm not counter spotted and they want to blind fire, they're going to have to guess where in that long stretch of like 70 or 80 millimeters, 70, 80 meters of bushes I am. Okay, so a couple of things. So as I've talked about before, I don't like YOLO spotting the ridge, the EF ridge in a light tank. Yes, you can do it. Yes, you can spot stuff. No, you're not going to be able to ever really meaningfully aim in. And you might be able to auto aim targets and hit them, but then you're basically relying on RNG to land your shots from you, not skill, right? Versus you're going to see me be able to work a lot of vision and put a lot of well-placed shots on these guys because of the vision mechanics. Now, if you are a heavy, the worst place you can go on this map is the 1-2 lane, in my opinion. If there's 0 to 1 arties, you should definitely think about going mid. And you can see Gravy's rewarded by going mid. He's been racking up damage already, right? Their arty did take a shot against me, and it was splash. But notice I'm moving laterally about 60 meters back and forth in front of like where I think the arty is. So he's going to have to make a really good shot to hit me. And then their E75 is kind of YOLOing up to the top of the ridge. Now, obviously, he's taking shots from people in the middle of the map, right? Flanking fire from 4 tanks in mid and from the 4 tanks behind me. Like, he's not going to get up there. That's just not going to happen. As a matter of fact, he can try to do that all day and, he'll simply die, right? Part of the reason why I'm successful at this is it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm playing a top tier EBR 105. It has to do with the fact that their light tanks are refusing to do their job. Their Sheridan tried to force getting to E1, which is a waste of time. Their EBR 105 is YOLO scouting along the F ridge. Again, largely along the E ridge, largely a waste of time. And then the 1390 was aiming at tanks in the middle instead of, that's not his job. He should be counter spotting me to brush me off the front, because every time I come to this ridge and I spot them, I'm enabling our tanks and our arty to farm damage. And I get a pretty sweet shot there. I love APCR with the high velocity. It makes it possible to hit moving targets so much more easily. And then, the 390 alpha on this gun really is nice. The main thing is just the lack of penetration, but because these people are aiming toward the middle, they're giving me the sides of their turrets, and then because some of their tanks keep running away from us, which is super inadvisable, I'm able to land penetrating shots. So I go ahead and try a shot there, it doesn't land, but whenever you shoot at people this close, even if their commander is stunned, you've got to assume that you're going to get counter spotted. And then again, notice I'm just kind of driving back and forth like along the stretch, like, Artie, take a guess, where do you think I am? You can shoot at me, but you're probably not going to hit me. And the Conqueror did the wrong thing. He should have sat at the base of the hill. There's no point for him to try to run away now like he's doing. And for that matter, their T30 stopped in the middle of the field, so he's neither at the base of the ridge, and he's neither back over by the water either. Now that E75, it's hard to say, was I still somehow lit? I don't think so. My guess is that their E75 happened to take a pretty good blind shot. You don't want to get too predictable around like which exact stretch of the bush here that you're in. And also, once you spot stuff, you don't need to, if you're not going to fire, you don't need to sit there and keep staring at them, right? Because the further exposed you are, the more likely you are to get blind fired or counter spotted. But I'm totally working this T30. Right, now he just spotted me there. What I likely suspect is that he's not running optics. Now in my T30 I run optics, and then definitely in assault oriented tank destroyers like the T95 and the E3 I run optics, so that I've got always on vision. Right, and I make sure that the vision is pushed out as close as possible or beyond 445 meters if I can do it with a decent crew. But because the E75 hit me earlier, I have to assume that I'm one-shottable by the T30, and that's why I'm being careful here, right? And thankfully, like, our tanks that have been sitting behind me finally pushed up. Because I've been up in front of them so far, most likely none of them have been spotted the entire time. They've been able to farm tanks that either, like the E75 that try to climb uphill, or have been sitting in the middle of the map like their IS-7, their AMX M4, right? But that's all being enabled because I'm out in front of them spotting, right, and preventing them from coming up the hill without getting smacked. Okay, their T30 is spotted. That's really good. I'm going to go ahead and... The gun depression on this tank is 7 degrees, which is okay. I consider 8 degrees really to be excellent because you can work terrain, but 7 degrees of gun depression is way more usable than the really limiting poor gun depression of only 6 degrees that the EBR 90 has. So moving up a tier, you get back a degree of gun depression, which is great. And now that the T30 is done, now I can go ahead and sprint forward and use this tank speed, because most likely I'm going to snapshot the Conqueror, right? The French wood vehicles have very fast aim times, and he's not going anywhere. But unfortunately, I don't take the right approach. That hill is totally climbable. Right? If I take a slightly better line, I can climb up that and go up the 0 line, which is a really smart angle of approach. But notice as I'm moving, I'm trying to keep a bush between me whenever possible. And then this E75 spots me once I'm out in the open past the bushes. And even before the 6-cent light bulb went off, I knew that I was spotted because his turret started to turn and aim specifically at me. Right? So you don't have to wait until 6 cents goes off. You should see whether tanks are trying to aim at you or not. And then there, tier 10 already hits me, and then I had loaded a high explosive. I thought that would be a one shot. I'm not sure if the shot either sailed or maybe it pre-detonated on his gun, and I just got super unlucky. But this is funny. See, he's aiming to my right because he thinks I'm still going to be running that way, but I kind of stopped and then put the finishing shot in on him. Alright, so normally speaking, Artie's either down in the river, around the river where that Artie was, or their Artie's just on the side of the tracks. Their EBR is making a YOLO run at me, and I'm guessing he probably did this for most of the game, where he's just trying to get one shot in and then run away. You can do that, and again, occasionally you'll get lucky games where you do well. I don't find that to be terribly helpful. Now I was running away here because I knew their Batchat 25T was coming, and it's like that old joke with the bear, right? You just got to outrun your friend, and the bear will go after your friend and not you. And so I wanted to back up enough so that he picks somebody else. In this case, our Badger, which is a good target for him to go after since the Badger is a non-turreted TD, but now I can come up here and work in some damage. I have to be careful. The Batchat obviously could two-shot me, but he's already blown a lot of his clip against the Badger, and so it's safe for me to engage. You'll notice like some of our tanks are like trying to cap, or to be really specific, it's just the Waffenträger. This is one of those situations where we have 0.0% chance of losing the game based on our map positioning and control. And it's interesting because a lot of players don't realize capping actually gives very low experience to the person who does it. If you wipe the team, the whole winning team gets an increase to their XP. I don't know the math behind it, but some other people have talked about it. And so basically, in a lot of cases, obviously if there's any question about whether or not you're going to win or lose, finish the cap, absolutely. But in cases like this where we're just beating the crap out of them and we have map control and we've got vision, we should have just finished them off. But you can see Gravy, because he went mid, which is a super smart thing for a heavy to do when there's 0 to 1 Arties on that map, because you can fire tanks directly in front of you, you can fire on tanks on hill, and he knew that I was going to be there providing vision. It just worked great, and our platoon carried hard. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any feedback or questions about the EBR 105, and I'm trying to figure out whether I want to go up the Italian mediums or maybe look at the Swedish mediums. Got to figure that out. Take care.